Hello again, this is Terry. Welcome to Marketing. In this lecture, this is the third that we're going to look at that deals with team development, and it also relates to, at a personal level, your performance, unrelated to whether you're in a team, but it's I see it in the team literature as well, and that's this concept of locus of control. And a guy named Rotter, a psychologist, developed a scale for measuring it back in the 60s, although it's a little bit dated in terms of its content. I think there's more recent ones around. And when I was at Mentor Graphics, I encountered this and I thought, I've heard of this before. And I went back and found this book by Lefcourt, which is a deep volume, 900 references or something like that, different studies of locus of control in animals and in people and things like that. And, beyond that, this concept of self-efficacy, the ability to accomplish things, that you have control over your destiny and over the world around you, is got a lot of overlap. Some people say that maybe locus of control and self-efficacy are the same. I'm not going to make a claim like that, but I'm not going to argue against it either. And let me say, from the Rotter work and then built on by others, it puts people on a spectrum to where you either have an internal locus of control, you believe that you control your destiny. It's sort of a self-responsibility. A student would say, I get good grades when I study and I have time to study, therefore it's up to me, I can do it. Of course, if I don't study, I wouldn't get good grades, but I can do it if I choose to do it. And at the other end of the spectrum, external locus of control is more of a fatalism. I'll get good grades if the professor likes me or if the exam is easy or fair, but not, my effort isn't what determines it. It's some external force there. And there's, like I say, there's lots of studies of this. And at a psychological level for humans, people who are internal, they process information more efficiently. They explore their environment more. They can take much higher stress without losing functionality. And this is the part that grabbed me when I first looked at it. I looked at it from a biological perspective when I was taking medical school courses. And they notice there's a book, it's called Stress Without Distress by a famous physiologist, Penfield. And organisms, other, dogs and cats and monkeys, as well as people with an internal locus of control, take dramatically higher levels of stress and they don't seem to suffer from it. And with the external locus of control, they more quickly succumb, not just to giving up and feeling bad and being depressed, but they suffer heart attacks. They have all kinds of medical problems. Their cortisol, their steroid levels are very high, and their thymus gland shrinks. And we've measured this. You can measure it in the blood, and over a long term, the stress is really quite pronounced. Also, they'll make more sustained efforts. They think they're going to achieve, so they keep making efforts to achieve, even if there's problems and blocks and things like that. Lots of clinical studies of people, lots of animal studies. Also, you may have read some literature. There's a book called The Fountainhead by, some people say, Ayn Rand or Ian Rand. She's a woman who came from Russia to the West after in the 20s, I guess, or something. She wrote this book about 1935, and all of her books, I believe, I guess I've only read 2 or 3 of them, have this philosophy. She's teaching her philosophy, and the lead character in this is an architect. And even though a lot of people say, oh, you can't do that, or you won't get a job, or things won't work out, he strongly believes, I can do it. And in fact, he does do it throughout the book, and it's a gripping novel, and I think it's 900 and some pages, and I think I read it by staying up all night because I couldn't put it down. But anyhow, that's an aside. If you want to see it portrayed by a character, and the movie The Fountainhead did not portray it very well. I was very disappointed in the movie, but the book is well written and all that. So where did I find it? Well, I was studying this culture of Mentor Graphics. They were really successful and growing really fast, and they had people and they worked together well. They had very high performing teams. They took on big challenges, and a couple times, people were just surprised at what they did. And and I said, well, how do we, do all these things? And one of the things was, well, we coach our people. You've got to coach people. And I said, well, how do you do that? And they said, talk to Fred. So I went and had a couple interviews with Fred, and Fred was very generous with his time and told me about it. The core of coaching is helping the person who you're coaching to feel in control of your own destiny. And that doing that and getting the sense of accomplishment is the greatest reward you can give them, and giving them the feeling that it's up to them. They'll either succeed or fail in doing this task and getting it done on time, but it's up to them. We're giving you support and tools and advice if you want it. And Fred was the best coach, and he had a very clear understanding of this. Fred had been was a top performing professional. He was the head of a department. He'd been at IBM for more than a decade, and then at GM for a long time. He was a very compelling person. One of the tensions that result is a leader of a group wants to have control over things, feel in control, but that can take away control from the followers. If they make decisions and allocate things and they don't let the people who report to them try things, and sometimes they will fail, and sometimes you have to let them fail so they can learn. And that's a tension. And when Fred talks about coaching, he says the leaders have to not control, don't over control. Let people make those choices and they'll learn from them. That freedom will inspire them to reach higher and to try to accomplish more. And he mentioned, although you'll hear this in other places, there's a store called Nordstrom, which is, again, a very successful, sort of high-priced store, started on the West Coast in Seattle. And they sold women's shoes initially, and then women clothing, and they sell, of course, makeup and dresses and coats and all this. And they also have some things for men, but that's only 15 or 20% of their things. And my wife shopped there a lot, and I bought a suit there once with her, and I have a couple other pieces which purchased there. It's high-quality stuff. What really stands out, though, is not the stuff, which you might be able to get other places. It's the quality of the people in terms of how they help you. They're very nice people, very helpful people, and they go out of their way to make sure customers are happy. And there's books written about this, one of which is the Nordstrom Handbook, which they give to all the people. And in that book, it shows when they ask the president one day what they're doing, he said, well, our management style is the inverted pyramid. Normally, a organization is a pyramid with the president at the top and then managers and then workers at the bottom. He says, no, I'm here to serve my managers so they can serve the workers, so the workers can best serve the customers. And I'm supporting, so the inverted pyramid is used as a gimmick in a sense, but to reflect what I see my role is to help these people so they can help all the other people, so they can help all the customers, so we'll be a successful organization. And Fred had mentioned this to me, and that's what caused me to go back and look at left chord again and some other things. And then one day a student was in one of my classes. He says, you talked about that locus of control. Here's something that we had. It's pinned on our bulletin board. And this is a little flow chart. He works in an engineering organization. Does it function? Yes. Well, then don't change anything. Then there's no problem. But if it doesn't, if something's broken, if the copier's jammed or something like this, did you try to fix it? Yes. You idiot. He says, you shouldn't have even tried. You should not try. Are you going to get in trouble? Yes. Well, you poor bastard. Can you blame someone else? No. Then you're stuck in this infinite loop of you poor bastard. You can't get out. You're just here forever. Are you going to get in trouble? Well, if no, then pretend you don't know about it. Then there's still a problem, but you just don't know about it, so you can't get blamed. And if you even make any effort to try, then you're an idiot, which is this is a very external locus of control. I hope you're starting to feel it. And if you try, does anybody know about it? Yes. Well, then you poor bastard, then you're sort of stuck in this loop. And if nobody knows about it, then hide it, because if no one knows about it, they can't blame you. And I said, why? It looks a little humorous when you look at it, I said, but do you really want the people in your organization to feel an external locus of control? Well, then they learn more slowly and they give up easily and stress wears them down faster. And And that's what the nature, and as I studied mentor graphics, and they were concerned that as they got bigger, they're getting it bureaucratic. And I did a couple hundred interviews, and the more I listened, the more I heard that a bureaucracy is a real external locus of control. And our entrepreneurial culture is a very internal locus of control, and we don't want to lose it. That's a big danger for us. And so that became central to the, I built a simulation for them to use for culture training as well. And that was a core message. Now, I threw up a couple things here. Self-efficacy, the ability to persist and an ability to succeed with a task. Beliefs, it's a belief you hold. It's a mindset. It's a way of looking at the world regarding his or her power to affect situations. It strongly influences both the power a person actually has to face challenges and the choices a person will make. Within STEM, we've studied that people who choose STEM and are successful in the STEM, in the US, we have a big thing. STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. Those are the fit together as the mindset that leads you to being a good engineer, I guess. And that study, we talk about STEM courses and that we're a STEM supporting school and things like that. And again, here's in Wiki, you can Wikipedia, you can read about this. They have a section on locus of control and all, and some people call it self-efficacy. Again, those are somewhat different literatures. I have this cartoon here I show. This is a cartoon I used to read. Calvin is a small child, 5 or 8 years old or something. Here he's walking in the snow with his parents. He hates it. He hates to be forced to go out and walk in the cold weather. And his parents are like, well, it'll build character and it's sort of pleasant out. And he's complaining and screaming and kicking the ground. And I'm not, I can't do it. And his parents are really getting tired of listening to this. And he says, we're home. And what does he do? The first thing he does is he goes out to play in the snow. Well, he just complained about being out in the snow. But here he was told he had to do it. Here he gets to choose. That's the difference. And I asked my students, which person do you want on your team? This grumbling, angry, kicking the snow person, or a person with enthusiasm and energy who's going to go out and explore and do things? And I don't think there's a big choice there. I think you go for the enthusiastic, happy person like that. And I also, as a graphic, I also was in Copenhagen walking across the plaza, and there was a sculpture there, and it looked like this. There's this huge rolling pin, and people are trying to get out of the way, but they can't, and they're getting crushed. And you see behind the rolling pin, it's even rolling up the hill, which doesn't make sense at all. It's rolling up the hill, but it's killing them, and these guys have all been flattened. A few are trying to crawl around the edge. And if it doesn't crush you, then you go over the cliff here. So this is a pretty external locus of control for these little fellows here, I have to say. And it's associated with, large organizations where you don't have choice and you can't see that you're having an impact. And if you want to watch a movie on this, by the way, Charlie Chaplin, one of his most famous movies is called Modern Times. He's working on an assembly line and he's got wrenches and his parts go by, he's supposed to tighten, but the assembly line starts going faster and faster and faster and he can't keep up. And that's a very external locus of control situation. What can you do? It's going faster and I'm supposed to do this job and I can't do it. And it's a comedy, of course. But certainly at the start of the industrial age, there was a huge feeling of change in that direction as large organizations and tasks changed. In the Ford company, in the early days of the Ford company, when they first installed the assembly line, the turnover rate of people who would take a job and then leave, they didn't want to keep working at that job, was more than 1,000% a year. 1,000%. That's just off the charts by a long ways, because it was so structured and so controlling. Of course, it was also hot and dirty and things like that. It was 1907, and we didn't know much about creating a work environment that was pleasant to work in. Assembly lines today are much more cleaner, better lit, fresher air, and usually people have the ability to stop or slow down the line if necessary. So that gives them the ultimate control. This is going too fast. Something's wrong here. I'm going to stop it and do something about it. Anyhow, here's an image of external locus control. And just to show the breadth here, there's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Do you know the difference between horses and zebras? They say, the zebra is a striped horse. Well, it's really not. And when the colonists from England and France went to Africa in the 16 and 1700s, and they're looking for, beasts of burden to pull the plow and help with the farming and all that. And they saw those zebras. They thought, oh, here we go, this will work. And guess what? They tried, and it turns out you cannot tame a zebra like you can. You can tame a wild horse if you work at it slowly, and eventually you can, what in English we say, break the horse. You break his spirit. We'll let you put a blanket, and then eventually a saddle, and then you can ride the horse or get him to pull a plow or something like that. Zebras will not. Zebras will fight you until they die. So they were never able to make them a beast of burden. And it's got something to do with the wildness of the zebra, but it's an unwillingness to accept that external control, putting a bit in your mouth like you do a horse to direct it and all that. And I'll reach one step further. My wife worked in a hospital for many years as an interpreter. She's from Vietnam, and sometimes they'd have quite a few Vietnamese people in Oregon where we lived, and they would come to the hospital and they didn't speak English very well, so she would interpret between the doctor who spoke English and the patient who spoke Vietnamese. That was her job. And one day there was an older woman who came, and she'd come from Vietnam, and the doctors there said, we can't help, the cancer's very far advanced. Maybe they have better medicine at this health science university in Oregon where my wife worked. And they did tests on her, and they, looked at her and this sort of thing. And then the doctor said to her, this is too advanced for us. We don't have a medicine or technology. We can, stop some pain and do things, but you should tell her to set her affairs in order. Say goodbye to family who's come with her. If she has things she needs to deal with, money or giving things away, she should tell people now what she wants, because we can't fight this very long. And my wife refused. She said, oh, you'd never do that in Vietnamese culture. You'd never tell a person they're going to die. You'd kill hope. You can't. That's the last thing this woman has. You just can't do that. And in Vietnam, we recognize that. Our doctors know this. We won't tell her. You might tell her husband or her sister or some family member, and maybe they will gradually do some things and all that. But to tell a person they're going to die, no, you can't do that. Now, the Americans are trying to be more helpful and efficient, and she might want to make some choices. And it's a different cultural take on medicine. You can't give her an external locus of control. That'll push her over the edge. That's too far for the Vietnamese. And here, I try to make this a little bit lighter. 2 children again, 8 or 9 years old, in a painting class. It looks like they're at school. And the fellow turns to the young girl. Have you ever given any thought to what you're going to do after all your hopes and dreams are crushed? Like that's the future, and you aren't going to be able to avoid it. What are you going to do after that happens, after you've been crushed psychologically, First, that the child even could recognize a thing, or that they've accepted at such a young age that it is the future. Maybe it's a distorted view. Certainly, people who are successful, you look like people who win the Olympics or any other sports competition, or who excel, at music or some other skill they enjoy, or just raises a family and feel a fulfillment in doing that. Having an internal locus control is an important part of it, and I stress that, and I've seen it from mentor graphics, through Left Court, through Calvin, through a book on zebras, through the physiologists and what stress can do in terms of damaging your health. And therefore, I wanted you to be aware of it. And it really came home to me as I talked with Fred for a couple hours on 2 or 3 interviews. And then I saw the Nordstrom culture embraced it too. And it's a powerful mindset. And we are mortal, so there's limits. But you ought to think about what you can do. And if you are depressed, in the therapy literature, when people are depressed and can't do much, get them to do something simple. Your house is a mess. Wash a few dishes. You'll feel better that you've accomplished something. You've washed, now the sink is clean. It took you 10 minutes. You wash the dishes, you clean the sink. Now it's not solving all your problems, but it does feel better. And it's a technique I've used. Some days I do something when I need to do something. I mow the lawn. I get some minor task done, and then I feel better. And then you build on that, then get another one done. It's a very much a positive feedback loop of accomplishment, and it affects your psychology. Okay, well, I wanted you to be aware of this. Part of building the team is making sure your team believes it can do the tasks before it, even though those might be uncertain. And that is the danger of a bureaucracy where a supervisor says you have to do task X by Wednesday at 9 o'clock, and you think I can't do that. I don't think I know how, or there's not enough time, or I don't have the resources. And that's a very external locus of control. And like those Ford employees, you'd go somewhere else perhaps.